Okay, this is September 13th, 1994, and we're back here with the Nevills ladies and Woody Reiff, still at Nevills Rapid, just before we drop into the gorge. And,
you want to hold it?
yeah, I can see her. And I guess
14 something to me, but I don't know what it is.
Bastille Day. No.
Splendid Norwood.
I wanted to ask you guys what your recollections were of the guys that were just the boatmen that worked for Mexican Hat and kind of stuff that went on with them. Starting with Joan, do you remember those guys?
With Mexican Hat or with Daddy?
With Nevills Expeditions.
Because he wasn't. He called it Nevills. Okay.
Yes, it was Nevills.
Yeah.
Then Mexican
Then those
Hat.
guys called it Mexican.
Then Canyoneers. Yeah.
Okay, well, with
Starting with
Nevills.
with Nevills. Let's see, Del Reed, Wayne McConkey, Kent Frost, Barry Goldwater, Doc Marston, Pat Riley, Jim Rigg.
Frank Wright.
Didn't I say Frank?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, good grief. Frank Wright, Press Walker, Frank Cook, one trip, San Juan, Honeymooner, Unintentioned Boatman, the Honeymoon Special, yeah, and I'm sure many others. Those are just the ones that I remember.
Ben Hess.
George Wing, Ben Hess, Fat Boy, Harold Chase. Hopefully that doesn't. And other than that, now I am out.
Do you remember him getting ready for the 38 trip? Do you remember him building those boats or any of that? Let's see.
I was 2.
Yeah.
I really don't. I do remember going over to the lodge, and it must have been, and this is one of those things I think I remember, it must have been the break between the Cataract and Grand trip, because I don't remember Lois, but I do remember El Zeta. Vaguely, and that's really all I remember, and hanging on to Daddy.
In the subsequent years, what was their routine like? Just with those guys getting ready for a season, and kind of how would their trips be patterned?
You'll have to help me along with this. Daddy worked on the boats pretty much through the winter on nice warm days, and the shop was about a quarter of a mile from the house, from our house, and just doing minimal stuff, putting on new strips, oak strips, because the bottoms of the boats all had oak strips. This is prior, needless to say, to fiberglass. And rebuilding chines, oarlocks if they needed to be rebuilt, that sort of thing. And then,
repainting.
well, but he didn't repaint because Daddy hated to paint. He had a goat to do that. And actually, I didn't get to paint boats. I got to paint other things that he hated to paint. And but when the boatmen then would start to come in, or someone casually would come in, for instance, you might come up and talk to him, and before you knew it, you were out there painting a boat. He had a lot of casual labor doing that, and he hated to letter. That was another thing he hated. And so he was always looking for someone to letter. And they didn't use stencils, by the way. They drew them with pieces of wood. Or a ruler. I don't remember a ruler. Pieces of wood. And then Mom would lay in the groceries. We'd usually go to Grand Junction, to City Market, and deal with Leo Prinster. and start ordering the case lot stuff because nothing or very little fresh was ever carried, except for a wheel of cheese, if you can call that fresh. And then the sleeping bags, of course, were hauled out, aired, and gotten ready to go, and that sort of thing.
And air mattresses patched.
Oh, those miserable air mattresses. Yes, that was, got to fill those with air. I'd forgotten that was both of our jobs. And put water on them and see where they bubbled and draw a circle. And in the very early years, they had rubber air mattresses, which were heavier than sin. And then you were ready to go, literally, on painting the cans. What else do you remember?
Mom and Daddy usually tried to get away, and Daddy did a lot of talks, different places, and I think that was generally fall or spring. Boatman, I remember Ben Hess, who was my mom's best friend husband, who funny guy.
The most beautiful singing voice.
And yeah, really a wonderful man, and Frank and Kent. And then I remember there were usually boys working there, and they were usually progeny of Frank's, and or nephews, and they would work. And sometimes they'd work driving rig, and it was busy, but it never seemed frenetic. It was just kind of busy and organized.
How would a typical season go as far as would they? I know they would do San Juan trips.
San Juan trips in May and June. 7 days on, coming back, setting up. Somebody said the other night 10 days, and I don't believe the San Juan trips were 10 days. If they were, seven. That's what I remembered. And then 3 days off, and then you're back on again. And the turnarounds, we never called them turnarounds. On the big rigs, you call them turnarounds because they're usually overnight. But it wasn't that busy. And then just shortly after the peak, usually around the 1st of July, the Colorado trips, the Grand Canyon trip would take off from Lee's Ferry. And of course that required a different kind of boat.
And it would build up to that. I mean, that was my memory of that. It was
you were
just
working toward the big trip,
yeah,
and then in
it was
August
the
we
big
played.
trip, yeah.
Well,
Afterwards.
Did everybody kind of know who was going to get to go on the big trip, or were there boatmen that ran the San Juan who didn't get to come down here?
Yes,
Oh,
there
yeah.
were. Oh yeah, a lot of them. Ben Hess, for example. Yeah, there were a lot. George Wing. There were a lot of boatmen that were not capable of running.
So it wasn't really their choice. It was just these.
No,
there were-
absolutely not.
No, it really required real skill to run a cataract through rapids. Otherwise, they would have maybe chosen George Wing or Ben Hess because they were very, very big guys. And lining, might have been helpful lining, but they were chosen for how good they were. Yeah.
Well, and too, it was his expedition, so he had this choice. People that Daddy felt good with and comfortable and safe with, and would follow his orders. One of the funny stories, gotta digress a second, just tell one on Ben Hess. Daddy was absolutely deaf. If I pull an oar, you pull an oar. Do not get out of your alignment. Once I put you there, follow me. And if you can't, beach it. So they're up on the San Juan. And I honestly don't remember if it was 13 foot or Paiute, but the one with the island. And they come down, and Ben got lost. He didn't remember what he was supposed to do. Daddy couldn't see Daddy, so he beached it. on the island. And they spent about half a day trying to get to him, to get him off the island. Sorry for the digression, but that has got to be one of the funnier stories.
Did your dad modify the instructions after that?
I'm sure not.
No, probably not.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
No, he had very precise ideas, and which is probably why he never lost a passenger. He rarely injured a passenger, except for Mom, and she got it out on the shore with an ankle. And he certainly never flipped a boat, and very few of his boatmen did. Barry Goldwater did.
He did. He doesn't seem to mention that in his book. Does he mention
No, he
that?
doesn't. He
think
doesn't in
so,
his book.
yeah,
But
yeah.
when we were, when he made his last run for the Senate, back in the 70s, he came up to Page, and at that point, the chamber and the museum were together. So we held the reception, and had just gotten the Mexican hat too from the Park Service. And he walked in, and I'm not going to delete what he said or clean it up or anything. God damn! That's the son of a bitch that flipped on me! And all these people are standing around looking. You know what he was saying? As he went over. And I had found the pictures of the flip, by the way. So I had taken them all down there, but I'd taken out the one with the flip, where it actually, you could see it went over. He said, there's one of it showing it going over. Where is it? So yeah, he will mention it.
Oh, and do you remember where you don't?
It was like, no, I was going to say soap, but it wasn't, because they're standing on the pictures taken from the left bank looking out, but it's a rapid very similar to a straight shot looking. I'm sorry, I don't.
Well, now you say that not everybody that worked for Nevills got to go down here. Are we doing okay? Are you looking at the levels? You know what? They sound fine. I'm like, this sounds real clean, and I'm comfortable with them at 2 or 3s.
Oh, you're piling up at 2 and 3 still?
Well, yeah, I'm right on up there, and there's no distortion whatsoever.
Okay. Just got dull with either low and above.
Well, everybody. So are we rolling? What I want to know is, how come Barry Goldwater got to be a boatman? Was it just because he was Barry Goldwater, or was he pretty
No,
good?
oh, he wasn't Barry Goldwater then. He and Daddy genuinely liked each other. They just, I think they probably found 2 playmates. Or 2 daredevils or whatever, I don't know, but they genuinely liked each other.
Do you guys?
Although they battled about whether things should be run or not, but that, that didn't.
How did that? What were the?
Oh,
how
Barry
did those-
wanted to run more things, and Daddy was cautious. He had to be. Unfortunately, there weren't other boats to pick up or very many airplane flights over the canyon to signal. And if you couldn't stop and pick up somebody and had to go on down through, say, on the next rapid, it was too hard for the boats to carry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like Cataract, I still haven't run that. But I know Daddy had, I remember him, I always wanted to run it because he always said it was, so scary. And it was,
Sure, flat out fun.
And he, that was pretty virgin territory. I mean, so few people had run. So I think it was probably a real testimony to his, I don't know, what would it, his love of taking people through, that he was so careful, because he was not in other areas of his life. I mean, that he was not noted for that. And I think part of it was,
for his precaution.
Yeah, I mean, this was not a cautious person. You know, he wasn't. One of the things we used to do is you mentioned something, Roy, about making our own entertainment. When there would be flash floods, he would take us up Sand Draw, and then he'd say, "Shorty," which was one of my nicknames, or yell at Joni, "Watch for the flood," and we'll beat it down. And I mean, sometimes we just about didn't beat it down, you know. So I mean, cautious was not his middle name. Huh?
One time we didn't, but that wasn't in Sand Draw. That was in the Twin Draws.
So I think that was part of, I don't know, his dedication as being a professional. He wanted to make it. He wanted to take away the
Stigma.
the scariness, the feeling that you had to be, you know, some Frank Buck of the Wilds or whatever, that people like us, just ordinary people, could do it.
And women, although
Yeah.
he was one of the greater chauvinists that I've had the pleasure of knowing. But still, he wanted very much to have women down there.
Yeah, it's interesting that that Lois and Elzada were on that
Yeah.
first trip.
And she told me something yesterday that was so neat. And she regrets, she said, to this day, of not taking him up on it, and the opportunity never came up again. But he asked her somewhere up above if she would like to row the boat through one of the riffles. And I can't remember why she said she didn't think she should. Oh, I think because one of the other men had not done it, and she thought she shouldn't.
Oh, to not hurt his feelings or something.
Yeah. And he never asked her again, and she said that was one of her real regrets. Isn't that neat? I thought that was special.
That says something about her too.
Yeah, it does.
Mhm.
Del Reed was from Bluff. After the river thing, he married a 16-year-old blonde. And they had several children, I remember that.
Lived in a teeny house.
Sort of almost a dugout, almost. And I'll let Sandy tell you about his carving ability, which was phenomenal. But he was a superb boatman. And built almost exactly like Daddy, except he was a lot more bow-legged. He was older than Daddy.
He was
That's
a
all I remember.
gentleman, a real gentle person, as I remember.
I don't remember.
And his chief fascination for me is he had webbed fingers, and they would keep operating and taking them apart, and they'd grow back together. And so since I was always fascinated with trying to get a glimpse of his fingers. I don't remember that I did. And I remember my mom saying it wasn't okay to do that, which of course heightened the fascination. He carved a hope chest for our mom that we still have today, and it's all pegged. There are no nails in it, and it has her initials on the end, and it has ornate, beautiful, beautiful carving. And that's what I remember about
And I have
him.
a set of bookends of
Yeah,
Mexican
that's
hat
right,
rock.
yeah.
And again, they're just absolutely
I mean, they're-
perfectly done.
They're well.
Why didn't he keep working for Nevills after 49?
I think maybe because he got married, to be perfectly honest.
I think they had lots of kids.
Yeah, I mean,
That's mine.
and golly, he had to be
He was
30,
old,
40
I think.
years older
Yeah,
than,
That's right. Yeah, because I
at
remember he was
least than
old.
she.
Yeah,
And I
he was
remember
old.
she was 16. And the only reason I really remember that is Mom was talking to somebody and just aghast. So I thought, oh, hey, this is really juicy, as children will. And you'd mentioned Lauren Bell. He was from Curly's trading post in Tuba City.
Oh, that's right. I
But
read
that's
that.
all I remember about him. I don't think I ever saw him again.
I
The
think
Curly family I did.
they snagged him in. Daddy just kind of picked him up off the road almost, I think, because he was, someone had backed out.
Don Harris.
Was that it?
That was on the 30-acre trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he worked for the Curley family, or he was an itinerant working for them. I really don't know.
I heard somewhere later that he committed suicide. That's why I was interested.
Huh.
Just, I can't remember where I heard that.
I don't know.
What do you remember about your first trip, and when was that? Your guys' first trips, respectively,
Through the Grand Canyon or the San Juan?
through the Grand Canyon.
Okay, it was in 1949 for me, the lower half. I hiked in with Bob Riggs' mother. Well, actually, I think we rode in. I was trying to think of that the other night, but I think we came down on mules. Ruth Rigg, her sister Jewel Hargle rode, and Mom went down with us, but she went back out with the packer. And I got sick, as usual. I was a real joy to take on a river trip. I got measles, things like this. And this time it was, I blew out an eardrum. So I honestly and truly don't remember that much about the trip. I really don't.
Is Nancy Steiger on that?
She almost had to be, but I don't remember her on that trip. But Nancy ran
She was.
about the last 3 years, every year. Fish Eyes was on that trip. Bill Hargle rode from Ruthie's brother from Omaha, definitely was on that trip. Dr. Jim came in at Whitmore.
Dr. Jim is Bob Riggs' dad.
Dad, yeah, and whom I later went to live with. And Dr. Jim did not like heat. That was just not his thing. And he came down, and by the time he got down to the river, he was hotter than Hades. And by the way, he was very, very bald. And he had a handkerchief over his head with a hat on it and was just fit to be tied. The heat. He was going to kill Pat Bundy for selling him the horse.
Sold him the horse.
Sold him the horse. Pat later sent him a bill because Dr. Jim just turned the horse loose.
Jeez.
Then I do remember that. And then going back out across the lake, I remember that. But that's about it. I'm sorry. That memory is really poor. I remember the San Juan trip a lot better.
I didn't run the Grand Canyon until 59, and I ran the upper half. I ran the San Juan and the Glen with Daddy in 49, and came down and I loved Nankoweap. I remember prowling all over there and spending a lot of time up there, just dreaming about living there and wanting to climb out the canyon there. And I got to fisheye, let's see, Grapevine. Rich Neff got to do Sockdolager, and we fought. He was my age, and we must have fought over every rapid all the way down who was going to fisheye. And it was really interesting what happened, and well, to me anyway. He fisheyed on Sock, and our boatman, Bill Jones, just never got it somehow. I don't know any other way of putting it. And he would follow too closely. So Rich is laying down, fisheye is, holding on. Fred and Maggie Eisman's boat goes up, and our boat shot under, and it crashed down, and Rich moved so fast, and he just missed. I mean, he really would have been killed. And I remember thinking, wow, good thing he was there. I would have died. The same thing happened on Grapevine, and I don't even remember moving. The very same thing, Bill did it again. He's, and Fred and Maggie's boat went up, we shot underneath the boat, and it crashed down, and I remember thinking, well, I guess I can move if I have to. And that's what I remember about that, and I can remember I remember a ton of stuff. But we got some monsoons, and watching the water come off the walls, and it felt like a big glen. That's Glen Canyon. I can remember thinking that, ooh, this feels like a great big glen, and.
When you say Nankow, do you mean did you guys hang out up at the ruins and stuff?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Now has that changed a lot up there? Or
Well, I don't know. I didn't hike up the other day. When I went in '72, there was less debris lying around. In other words, there had been lots of corn cobs, and there were things that had been identified as turkey feather, just remnants, but there was like little fluffy stuff, almost in little rows. There were just little artifacts. And in '72, there were no artifacts. I didn't go up the other day. So I don't remember the windows looking that clear. That's what I don't remember. But I don't know
that distinctly.
Yeah. Now, I don't know whether that's just lack of memory. I just don't know.
Well, in general,
The beach is better.
in general, the beach is better
It's
now.
better now.
Is it bigger, or how's it better?
To me, it's slightly bigger, and it's just for camping. It's much better the way the trees have grown up around it, and it's a lot cleaner and easier. I remember a bank there, and when you parked the boats, it was in the sun, direct sun.
We camped upstream, so we were upstream. It was, and the only reason I remember that is we had a real pain with us, a kid, and I was 15 and not too wonderful myself. But he
Is
kept
his name Glenn?
Yes, this kid was legendary, and he had groused all the way down the canyon, and I had finally said, I am going to throw you in if you complain anymore. And it was rocky. It wasn't smooth, and we were camped in rocks, and so I could see where we were. We were further upstream, and I don't know why we didn't use that camp. I don't know.
You say it's cleaner now.
That's I never camped there, but we would stop, needless to say, to go up, and so that's what I'm basing my memory on that beach.
When you say clean, you mean there was human refuse or ashes or what?
Oh yeah, there was a lot of that all through the canyon
Before, in the early days.
before they started, before it started being regulated and what have you.
What did a typical beach look like?
Toilet paper, cigarette butts, my most hated thing. Ashes,
Yes, lots.
lots of fire pits, and people not respecting. I didn't have as big a hang up with the fire pits if people stuck to one fire pit. It's when you got your multitudinous fire pits that I really got aggravated, and I don't miss those.
And was that even in '49?
On 49, the other day I was trying to remember because we did not burn toilet paper, and we threw cans and everything in the river. In fact, everything you really didn't need went in the river.
Usually, I know.
Or burned on the beach.
You put them in sacks with rocks. I can remember.
I just put in tin cans. You'd puncture the bottom of them so it would pick up water and then toss it, or take out both ends. I don't remember sacks, but we probably did.
In '59, it was really there wasn't human debris, except for we may not have been following one of her parties, but except for ashes, and it was apparent at some places people had pulled off branches of trees, maybe for fire. So that there was definitely, you would know people had been there. When Woody and I went back in the '70s, I was appalled by the canyon. It was hard to be there. Well, I mean, parts of it were still wonderful, but it was hard to be there. Tampons,
In the 70s.
oh, it was awful, and it was dirty, and I,
Early 70s?
yeah, early 70s, 71, 72, 70 or 72. I don't remember, I think we went concurrently, and it was dirty, and it smelled. No one was using porta potties, and Woody had really been a proponent of
We
that
were.
before.
Canyoneers was. Our big boat was built
Yeah,
with it.
that's right. It was on the boat, but and I shouldn't say no one because I don't know that as a fact. But
Curry was.
most people were not, and we camped at Travertine, and I will never forget the odor. It was just terrible and real heartbreaking. It was and it was dirty. I mean, there was stuff. I went around, picking stuff up all over, just trying to. I guess turn it around, and it seemed real clear to me that not flooding through. I mean, I was laying the cause to too many people, no one hauling stuff out, and when I say no one, again, I don't know who was and who wasn't, and then no flooding, flushing it through, but it was crummy.
How do you find it now?
Oh.
compared to
It's just wonderful. I think I found 3 cigarette butts, and I'm one who picks up by police beaches. Yeah, I think it's wonderful in comparison.
49.
that? 49.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, that was the best, you mean, or
It reminds me of 49.
Yeah, it's equivalent.
you mean just for how clean it is? What do we
Sheer,
get?
yeah.
Tape out? Do we have another tape? Okay, we gotta change tape. Yeah,
Did you know that?
Well,
I was gonna
there's a
mention it.
lot of coincidences, you know?
It's really
I mean,
risky with them.
Things crop up out of the blue that
what kind of things crop up out of the blue?
Oh, I mean, something happened years and years ago, and then it comes together on this trip or something. I can't think right now of any. Oh, yeah. Lois. Back in the end of the trip that she made down the canyon, they took a trip through Boulder Dam. Now, at that time, I was a guide at Boulder Dam. And I was with that trip that went through the dam. Actually, Blackie Hardy handled the talk, and I was the chaser. Just, I mean,
Do you remember her coming? Do you remember her specifically?
no, I wouldn't have known her to see her, but I remembered the name. I mean, and oh, what else?
Didn't
It
you
was-
meet Daddy's trip? Didn't you come up lake to meet him?
Oh, well, yeah, I was, but that was the trip that was the full boat was on.
Sea Grants.
Sea Grant.
Yeah. I had a day off. They had a vacancy on the boat going up the lake, cruise tour trip. And my wife and I rode up the lake, and when we got up, Quartermaster Canyon area, here came the strip in, and we picked it up and hauled it back down. That was something unexpected. Some of the passengers got into the boat, and some of them stayed on there, on the canyon boats. I do have pictures that I took on that, which were put in my little old store box, undeveloped. Now, I moved to Los Angeles and back to the desert again 20 years later and finally developed those.
Did they come out pretty good?
They came out all right.
Those would be fun to see. I tell
Yeah.
ya. I wish we could just. I wish we didn't have to hurry, but I'm starting to feel like you guys got to eat and we got to get down there to the. We got to go run all these rapids. We're going to need to come back to this stuff. Couple more questions. One, the point of this, we're looking at the big changes in the canyon and stuff. How do the beaches, aside from being clean, just physically differ from what you guys remember from the pre-dam times?
To me, they vary, but I've not seen or remembered radical changes, except in oddball places. Yesterday, Little Colorado. Somewhere during seeing the Little Colorado, there was a left-hand channel, which there no longer is. I also do not remember 2 gravel bars, and there may have been, but I don't remember that. Greenery, I haven't been surprised at the amount. It seems to me there has always been a lot of greenery. I've been mind blown at the number of birds. Swallows, ducks, and this happens to be my favorite time of the year, so the trips that I've tried to run have been primarily this time of the year.
Well, because I've heard, Dick McCallum and some of these guys talk about beaches bigger than football fields, these huge sand dunes. You guys don't remember those?
Well, I remember the beaches being bigger, but I don't know where big as football fields, but that's what I remember, more sand on beaches. Is that what
I
you
don't.
remembered, Woody, that there was?
Yeah,
I
it
don't.
seems like they've been, all of them are closer.
Yeah,
Not enough room on them.
and the other thing, more gravel where I remembered sand. And I haven't known whether to assess that to flooding or different water levels and different time of year.
Or just people walking.
Do you guys, like water levels, do you remember anything about that?
The highest I've ever run was 65,000. And we had tremendous turbulence on the upper half. And that was in a cat boat. And also granite was... and of course then there were lesser beaches and what have you. But and this is low water. That's the main thing
We were on higher water, but I don't remember how high. I don't remember levels. Do you, Woody?
No,
Oh,
I have no idea what it
not
was.
either.
It wasn't low,
Yeah.
but how much, what the volume was, I don't.
What's this? What's it feel like to be on this trip and to be sitting here at Nevills Rapid?
It's a great campsite.
Isn't it, though?
And an honor, I guess, for me. Great trip, a great group of people. I think that probably means more than the campsite, although I must tell you, when you were talking yesterday about not camping here, I wanted to say and I guess I said it under my breath loudly enough that we did. So yeah, it means it's an appreciation.
Mom and Daddy's ashes were scattered, and so for me, they're anywhere in the Southwest.
I felt like last night, after we talked and seeing you guys in that cataract boat, I felt like I kind of felt the spirit of him, really. You know, it was it was an emotional thing for me too. I really felt the spirit of your parents here in the canyon and the love they felt for it. Did you kind of feel that too? I really did.
Oh, I do.
It's stronger.
Definitely, pretty much any time I'm on the river. In the collection of pictures that went to Salt Lake, there is a picture of Daddy and I up on the green that I totally treasure. And we had just run, I don't know, disaster, triplet, something. Certainly not Hell's Half Mile, because that one we portaged. But something up there. And he and I are standing there talking. And that's whenever I need a touchstone or have one comes to me on the river, it's always that. And he's there.
I got one more. How is your perception of the, God, there's so much more. This is really bugging me that we're not getting all this in. You know, I wanted to talk about Glen Canyon and all that stuff, but I'm feeling
Woody's the pro on Glen Canyon.
well, is that a battery?
Start gnawing on it. We know he's in trouble.
When it comes to the Bureau Reclamation, what was your perception of those guys initially, and has it changed based on this trip?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Yeah, tell me the truth too, because we're not fishing for anything but.
I grew up with USBR being called the Bureau of Rec, and hating Wayne Aspinall with a purple passion. And actually, until I read what's his name's book, I didn't remember why I hated the poor man so much, but because of the Glen Canyon project, I later realized. And understanding too the economics of the dam and the Bureau of Reclamation's projects. And it's sort of a tearing thing for me. I weigh both sides. I'm sorry that it came to a lawsuit to put them into the Glen Canyon Environmental Study Project, but I think they have been responsive when pushed, and I think it's a lot of goods coming out of it, and we'll see, as long as we don't try to fix everything, which is always a scary thing to me.
How do you feel about this trip overall in light of that? Just the specific mission of this trip?
I think since you have folks on here who maybe are a little bit more, I'm not sure if liberal's the word, but see a different viewpoint, that maybe it won't be as totally targeted, because that's what I don't like, Lou. It worries me when we try to come back in, and when we were talking about, well, that's not a native species, that is, that sort of thing. Well, maybe it is native now. Let's don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think maybe this type trip, with all the different viewpoints and everything, maybe will make that more clear.
Do you want to add about the Bureau of Rec, honey?
No.
Okay. I don't like Lake Powell. I don't like what happened. I don't go up there. I hike into Rainbow Bridge. I think it's a typical bureaucracy. I don't think it's grassroots people. It's reassuring to me that there are people at this level, but I don't think that's ever been the problem. I can remember I think it may have been Bureau of Rec who was going to put the campsite at the Paria, or at least very below the Paria, and Woody pointed out to
Park
them
Service.
that
was
flooded.
Park, yeah.
Okay, Park Service. but it was decisions made in Washington. I think the same thing about the Glen, and it was a trade-off. If you'll remember, they saved Flaming Gorge and put in Glen Canyon Dam. I think it's scary that people aren't in backcountry, and I think we always need to be vigilant. Has it changed because of this trip? I don't think it's ever been the grassroots guys. That's my perception.
The Bureau, you mean, or has it changed? You mean the decision makers? You mean that?
I think the decision makers at the top are people who don't understand this country or even the need for wild and secret places. I don't think people who are exposed to this necessarily share that view. Joan and I have a cousin now deceased who is one of the primary dam designers for Bureau of Rec in the country, and he was devastated by the controversy. He saw it as a wonderful reclamation project, and was deeply saddened, just didn't understand it. But he'd never been here, and he wouldn't have gotten here. So
why wouldn't he have gotten here? Did you never tried to take him, or he just didn't want to go?
No, that wouldn't. No.
no.
Even had he gotten here, he would not have seen it.
He might have.
You have more
knows?
faith than I do.
Yeah, he might have. I don't know. But it wouldn't have been possible to get in here, so it's a moot point.
So I wonder why he thought it was such a wonderful project.
Well, I don't know. I mean, now you're getting into personal philosophy. I personally think there are a lot of people who believe that if you can tame nature, if you can do it, somehow it makes you safer. I see those guys as power people. I mean, now that's my own personal philosophy, but that if they could dam every river that's left and wild, that somehow they have left a monument, and it's like graffiti on the wall. See, there I am, it's that same kind of thing. And I think bureaucracies get into that, so that's just my own personal philosophy. I think they're real scary.
Okay. Jeff, can you think of it? I can think of a million more things, but I'm just thinking we gotta get rolling.
We gotta eat.
What?
Well, I feel like you said the thing I always want to know is, how are you gonna end up feeling about the people on this trip, the trip itself, yourselves, when you get done and you've been home for a week, or you've been home for a day, or when we dock at Diamond Point, how are you gonna? Has it changed, or did you?
Well, I can answer part of that. Yesterday, Tom Meyer and I hiked up to the Beamer cabin and discovered a boat that I'm sure no one's ever seen before, on River Wright, that's cached up there from a science project. And Bob Webb came very sternly up to get us, and he said, "You guys are in real trouble." And then he just beamed. And for me, I've watched all these scientists who have vast, really focused areas of studies. What underlies each one of them is a real love of the canyon, and I'm really glad, because that was one of my secret concerns is, oh gosh, what if they're so focused they don't get the overall picture, and that's not what I found. So I don't think, Jeff, that's going to happen at Diamond Creek, but I've already, that's been a very good feeling to know that that although they're focused scientists, they really love this place too, and so that's been very reassuring. How will I change? I guess in the way I do every day, and that is just simply live it. That's changing it. So,
And for me, it's been number one, probably an appreciation. And I love history, always have, and hearing all the fabulous stories, both of not of just the quote-unquote legends, but of the younger group, yourselves, the scientists, and seeing the canyon through all of your eyes more than through a selfish look of my own eyes. And that has been a real joy. I am going to hate Diamond Creek, I'm telling you right now. I don't want to go.
What?
I don't want to leave.
What do you see when you see it through our eyes?
I have seen more of the sloughs than there have off the walls than I've ever seen before. I've been looking at the beaches with a new eye, not just a memory's eye. Some of the new things, some of the equipment that is used now. I mean, my God, think of taking this equipment down, for example.
And the
microwave.
Oh
That's
my
gotta
God.
be the.
Let's don't get started on that one.
By the way, I don't like the generator.
Yeah.
I really don't on a road trip. But it has. I guess that's where I'm coming from, and I feel very comfortable with the whole group.
Mm-hmm.
Have you made new friends? I mean, yet, or have you, in 6 days, has there not been that opportunity?
You know, I honestly haven't thought about that. I just considered everybody that way, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sort of a Pollyanna-ish outlook, but
I think
that's
so,
that's really the way I feel. There are some that I would like to talk to more and haven't had the opportunity to yet, but I will.
Well, I hate to do this. We're gonna